the most important thing in these first couple weeks is getting the attitude and energy right. So I speak a lot in the trainings. Was the intensity what it needed to be? Was the effort what it needed to be? The actual specific actions will come with repetitions, but if we don't lay the foundation of that energy, effort, focus, then we're not going to ever have success with those actions. So
hello and welcome to the season premiere of the United Soccer Lounge. My name is Riley James. This is Goals TV, and episode 46 is a packed one. We got plenty of things to talk about. Later in the show will be FC Naples' manager Matt Poland, and he leads this team into their inaugural season in USL League One. Plenty to discuss there, but first, we had this show done, dusted, recorded, ready to go in the hopper for Thursday, February 20th. And here I am on February 18th, a Tuesday, re-recording a bunch of things because USL dropped some massive news. A first division league is coming to the structure in 2027. So who do I call for information about this? I call our old friend John Morrissey, who was on plenty during the playoffs last season. So we talked to John about what this thing is, how it works with promotion relegation, what's the qualification process to be able to get your favorite USL Championship or USL League One team into the first division. And we have a little fun at the end trying to name this thing and create some branding for it. So plenty of things to be excited about with John Morrissey coming up in just a moment. I will come back, re-intro Matt Poland, and you will hear from Matt Poland, and I'll tie the whole thing up at the end of the show. But plenty to be excited about. A massive show, a packed show to kick off season 2 of the United Soccer Lounge. So I'll stop talking. I'll get to John Morrissey, and I'll see you after this 10-minute segment we recorded with the smartest man in all of USL. Please welcome to the show the smartest and busiest man in all of USL these days, writer from USLTactics.com and backheeled co-host of the USL show. Please welcome back to the program, friend of the show, John Morrissey. John, very busy couple of days for you. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, doing really well. It's been a whirlwind ever since the D1 news broke, but happy to be talking about it with you.
Now, like I said in the opening of the show, I will not keep you very long. We have a full episode to get to with Matt Poland of FC Naples. But there's something we need to address off the top of the show, right? It is a massive piece of news that dropped. USL announced the First Division League coming in 2027. 12 to 14 teams will play in this thing. Now, you've talked to people, I've talked to people from your side. What is the overall reaction that you've seen from folks about USL dropping this news?
I think, and you've had similar conversations as well, I'm sure. If you talk to people within the league, whether it's at the ownership level, the player, or front office level, I think people are excited about it. They see this as something that the league is prepared for. I definitely on the ownership and investment side as well. Like there's always been the ambition to kind of move up and do something bold. So I think within the USL community, quite positive. When you kind of think about news of this caliber, something that really affects American soccer, like this is a story that kind of hit escape velocity and was very much discussed in MLS circles and kind of hit that broader landscape. And I think there are a lot of people who were negative about it, kind of not understanding the MO, which is an interesting conundrum in and of itself in terms of how the USL is communicating. But for the people who are invested in this league and following this league, a mix of some confusion, some questions, but overall, like general agreement that this is an interesting and useful move.
Now, there has to be teams that play in the league. And I think the most interesting question for a lot of people is, what is that selection process going to be? How many USL Championship clubs will be looked at? How many expansion clubs will be included? And one thing I don't think enough people are talking about is, do any USL League One clubs deserve to be looked at as a part of this new First Division? Now, what have you heard from this, and what do you expect to happen over the next couple of years?
Yeah, from what I've talked to and very briefly with the league office and what they kind of put in with the press release is that it's going to be a bid-based setup. So nobody's going to have an automatic place in this league. You're going to need to apply and make the case that you deserve to be a Division One club within the USL. Which, if we're being real, like that's the only way to do that equitably and make teams feel like they've had a legitimate chance. I think you kind of raise an interesting point about who's going to get in. Like it's easy to assume, oh, it'll be 12 to 14 existing USL championship clubs. I think that at least on the expansion front, Oklahoma City seems extremely promising to be involved in this. Obviously, the energy went on hiatus, but that's going to be a different organization. They've hired some people from the league office to help run things there. They've got impressive investment. The stadium plan looks to be smooth. I would say similar things with USL Dallas as well. Like getting into a big market is a big deal. The owners there seem to be quite passionate about what they're doing. Jacksonville put out a statement where they specifically called out they're going to be building a 15,000 seat stadium, which is something that's important in terms of the pro league standards that the league has to meet. So those are three places I would keep an eye on. League One, kind of an interesting question. Union Omaha feels like the leader in the clubhouse just because they've got their own stadium in the works, albeit with some troubles, but you figure by 2027, 2028, they're going to be all right. I think Richmond might be the other fascinating team. They obviously were in the top level of USL competition for decades. That's an organization that people really respect around the league, and the stadium meets the size requirement. So, providing that Richmond's ownership absolutely like wants to make that jump and make that financial commitment, they'd be an awesome candidate. But I think for now, League One mostly stands pat.
And look, it's going to feature a promotion relegation system, at least the report says it's going to. So there's a lot of opportunity to play your way into it, but obviously that first season is a massive thing for those clubs. Yes, it's going to take a financial investment, but also the financial reward of this going well is going to be massive for those 12 to 14 teams. Now, there are financial thresholds it takes to be a Division One league in the United States, not only from the league standpoint, but from the club standpoint. How do you see this shaping out over the next couple of years as they build this, as they announce teams, as they kind of give us a structure of how this is going to work, not only in competition with Major League Soccer, but also in the USL League office, keeping this idea alive until then?
Yeah, I mean, like on the money side, I tend to think that the minimums that US soccer sets aren't going to be that bad, at least in terms of like net worth. Obviously, someone being worth $40 million probably sounds like a lot to you and me, but in terms of like the people who are owning a USL team, they all pretty much do it. Like that's not going to be a hurdle.
Yeah.
There are plenty of other requirements relative to stadium size, like I've been hinting at, and the number of markets you've got that have a million people or more that can be a little bit more questionable. And I think there's also the consideration of the investment it takes to get up to that D1 standard. Like, yes, we love the USL Championship. We love the teams involved. I think it's debatable whether you've got 14 of them that are competing at a level that's really befitting of that label. So if, say, it takes a couple millions of dollars for every team in the league who wants to meet that standard to kind of match what a team like Louisville is doing to get that academy going, to get a stadium up to par, I think that'll be necessary. But overall, like, provided that US soccer is going to be a willing partner and is going to give the league time via waivers, which is an open question, but you figure that it's in the pipeline at least. It's certainly doable for the USL without spending $1 billion and revolutionizing the sport.
I love the very ambitious tweet from Louisville City. Did we just get promoted? Like they were already expecting with their all of the innovations, all the things they're doing up in Kentucky. Like let's take a second. Like this just got announced 5 minutes ago, and we're already making plans to play in the first division. Look, there's plenty of things that we could talk about this. We'll do this in coming shows. I'm sure John will be a part of that. But we got 3 minutes or 2.5 as I say this. Look, USL has done a fantastic job with the restructuring and rebranding of this league, right? USL Championship, USL League One, League Two, they all have their own unique aspects to it and their own unique branding. But we're introducing something new to that system. So I'm curious if you've heard anything or if you have any speculation on what this first division will be called. My vote is the U.S. Premiership, right? If we're going to follow the English model, let's go all the way in with the name of that. But John, do you have any ideas of what this thing should be called?
If I were a betting man, I would agree with you. Like, I think that that is just obviously the path they're going to, but that feels really boring and derivative to me. And I get like, oh, we're doing pro rel, we're gonna copy the English names. Yeah, I don't have a good proposal, honestly, for what they should be calling it. Why can't it just be the United Soccer League? Like, no labels, drop the. Honestly, just USL. I don't know. It just feels uninspired to be copy pasting from what other people are doing.
And that's fair. I think, look, American soccer is already confusing to everyone else in the world. This show isn't going to come out for a while, so don't get too excited. But I talked to Florian Velo a couple weeks ago, and he was very confused when he got to the United States and how a few things worked. If we call it the United Soccer League, I feel like that's going to bring a lot of confusion into like USL Championship, USL League One. What's the top one called? Oh, just USL. It's like, oh, like I don't know. There's not a right answer to this right now. But my main thing, and because we use them a lot on the show, and because it's become a very big part of how I identify with USL, is the color of the little square thing. Like, what's that going to be? Because I feel like we've already used it up with the academy and the youth and all the different leagues and everything. That's another thing too, is what's the branding going to be like? And of course, we don't know anything. This is pure speculation. But John, what would you vote?
So if you like go to actual USL headquarters, their website, they've got a very nice kind of navy blue thing going on that is not covered anywhere else. Given that we've basically hit the entire rainbow otherwise, navy blue feels like the kind of thing we want for USL Premier or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah, and it fits very well with what the U.S. national team usually does, with the Navy uniforms a lot of the time. So it would be very
Talk about
American to
being
do so.
patriotic, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it fits in the American soccer structure, and obviously there's plenty of things to work out way before we get to what this thing is called and what colors we use. But John Morrissey, thank you so much for coming to hang out. I'm sure there's plenty of other people that want to talk to you, but I appreciate you giving time to us.
No, honored to be here for the season premiere. So thank you for having me.
And that's why John Morrissey is the smartest man in all of USL. Cannot appreciate him enough for coming to hang out. A lot of news that's going to be coming out about that over the next couple of weeks and months and years. So we'll be sure to stay on top of that. We have John on speed dial these days, so we'll reach out to him or maybe some other journalists with news regarding the first division. Now, the actual show we had planned for today is with Matt Poland, who's the manager of FC Naples, who will make their debut in USL League One in 2025. Their inaugural season begins with an appearance on our show, which is really, really cool. Cannot appreciate them enough. Shout out also to Westchester, who had their owner on our program. So a lot of USL League One expansion as we head into the season. So we talked to Matt about a blank canvas, right? Filling this roster to what he thinks this should look like. Getting players down to Florida. The recruiting pitch wasn't very difficult to get players 12 minutes from the beach and their housing that they're going to provide for them. But his experiences at Chicago House and competing very well in the U.S. Open Cup and how that has been parlayed into obviously coaching against some of the teams he beat in the U.S. Open Cup. So super excited to be able to chat with Matt. You'll hear that coming up in just a moment. But if you do like the show, you can subscribe to it at goals.tv. You can like it, comment your favorite thing about John Morrissey, about FC Naples, about Florida, about the first division coming up in 2027. Which clubs should make that first division in 2027, or just your favorite thing about soccer. That'll do it for us off the top of the show. Shout out John Morrissey. And obviously, shout out Matt Poland, who you're about to hear from. Please welcome to the show the former manager of Chicago House in the Midwestern Premier League. You may know that name from a couple U.S. Open Cup runs. He has a managerial record of 23, 7, and 8. He was a professional player in the northern parts of Europe, and now he's the lead manager in charge of FC Naples, an expansion team coming into USL League One here in 2025. Please welcome to the program, Matt Poland. Matt, thank you so much for making time, man. How are you?
Absolutely. Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you've been very, very busy the last couple of weeks trying to get this team ready to go. So it's amazing to see kind of the progress from all the expansion teams, but obviously what I've been reading about FC Naples is really great. I want to ask a question about Florida. You've made Florida home. You coached in Chicago most recently, but what about the FC Naples job compelled you to come back to Florida and obviously make the jump up to the third division?
Yeah, so obviously with a new club, there's positives and negatives to it, having to build something from the ground. But I think the most intriguing aspect is starting with a blank canvas. I was with Chicago House. I was an assistant coach the first year as a startup new expansion team. So luckily, I had some experience of seeing a team come together from nothing and building that foundation. The biggest things for me for this was obviously getting to come back home in the off seasons. I've lived 30 minutes south of here for the last 13, 14 years. So getting to build a club for this community is certainly a special experience. And the other aspect that made this job so desirable was the community as a whole, the ownership, and obviously the facilities and all that we have. To me, I have two things that matter most when I choose a job. Number one, am I going to learn and grow? If I'm not going to learn and grow, then I don't want to be in that environment because a big thing for me in coaching is constantly learning and growing. And the other part is, are we going to make an actual impact in the community that we play? That was a conversation early on with ownership in the hiring process that I stated was important to me. And it's nice that we align in that value. There's so many other things that you can put resources to if it's just about soccer. To me, a club has a responsibility to positively impact the community.
And obviously, Naples has the great opportunity as pretty much one of the only shows in town. And in a state full of soccer, Naples, I think, has been left kind of by the wayside. But I've seen Naples obviously taking up that that mantle and going into USL League One. You mentioned the roster. I want to ask you a couple tactical things first before we get into kind of the history of you as a coach. How difficult is it to look at a blank piece of paper when you first show up? It's like, this is your list of players. It's nothing, a blank canvas. What was the process in trying to build a vision for what this team to look like, and how difficult was to actually bring that to life?
Yeah, so obviously extremely difficult because you're filling 23 spots from nothing. When I took the job, we didn't even have a soccer cone or a soccer ball, right? Everything had to be created in a sense. For me, I made three different groupings of players that I kind of went after. So the first group was guys maybe I'd worked with that were veterans, that were good culture builders. To me, the culture is the most important thing to get right in a new club. That sets the standard for the history of the club. So culture was important. Veterans that knew what my standards were, understood the league, understood the travel, the referees, everything about the league, and we're going to be good role models for younger players. The second grouping of guys were, guys in the middle of their career in their primes, that saw value in coming to this, wanted to play a part in building a strong team, could also go out on a Saturday and get the job done. And also guys that wanted more of their career. A big thing for us is we want to be a pit stop on the road of their career. We want to be a stepping stone. We don't want this to be a place where players just come to retire. So we want to air towards younger, with more potential, and we want to help develop that and move them to higher levels. And then the third grouping is those younger players that are looking for maybe their first pro contract. Maybe they were from MLS Next Pro, didn't make the first team, and they're saying, hey, I know I can play higher than this. I just need the minutes to showcase that. So that was kind of the three different categories. And then through that, identified profiles of players, spoke to the players, spoke to the agents, and yeah, tried to create a team based on what we thought, or how the pieces we thought would fit together. Obviously, you don't know until that first day and you see the pieces actually fitting together. So some of it is also based on, hopefully educated guesses.
Now, you've been doing this for a week now. We're talking January 20th. The show comes out February 20th, obviously a month that I'm not going to get to hear about, but just the first week of all this coming together, you have some of the guys in already, you've been training. That vision that you had, is that coming together? I know it's a little early days here and I don't want you to give away too much, but what's that first week of practice been like?
Yeah, first week is one, kind of seeing how the guys fit together. started introducing our game model, started introducing the style we want to play. To me, the biggest is early on, there's going to be, there's layers to introducing a new game model. Don't want to add too much information too fast, want to slowly build that. And so to me, it's like the most important thing in these first couple weeks is getting the attitude and energy right. So I speak a lot in the trainings. Was the intensity what it needed to be? Was the effort what it needed to be? The actual specific actions will come with repetitions, but if we don't lay the foundation of that energy, effort, focus, then we're not going to ever have success with those actions. So overall, happy with it. And again, the biggest thing is, week one isn't week two isn't week three, and week three isn't month 10. So the challenge for me is every week, can we see growth? If we see growth, we're heading in the right direction. Some weeks, maybe it's 1% growth. Some weeks, maybe it's 5%. But no matter what, we want to see just continual progress towards what that perfection is. I told them today, right? The idea is we're striving towards perfection of our game model. We're never going to achieve it, but every week are we getting, closer to what that vision of perfection is.
And now, to go back to kind of like getting the guys that you want, right? To fit what your style of play is, which I'll ask you about in a moment, but ultimately just get guys down and signed and in the program. Florida is a fun place. We all have different ideas of what Florida is. You live there, you work there these days. How big of a recruiting advantage is Florida versus a couple other places that maybe get a little colder in different parts of the year? Was that a big point of emphasis when you were talking to guys about the weather and about different things associated with that state?
Yeah, I mean, obviously selling, hey, come and be in shorts and a t-shirt for preseason in January is a great selling point. Florida's an incredible place. Obviously living 12 minutes from the beach for the guys and housing is a nice selling point as well. And Naples itself is a unique place, right? It was voted the number one place to live last year in the US. So you're coming into a very clean, very safe environment. You're coming into a community that is very philanthropic, very involved. They want to be involved in this. We had our jersey reveal a couple weeks ago on a Wednesday night before the holidays. A little 30-minute function of, hey, just come and see the first jersey, and over 500 people showed up.
Yeah, wow.
So the community has backed us, and so all of that is obviously helpful in recruiting. And I think the biggest area of recruiting for me is I'm very open and honest of what my goals and expectations are for the team and for individual players. And if that aligns with the player, great. And if that doesn't align with the player that we're recruiting, then, it's probably not the right place. So I want them to come. Absolutely. I want them, the quality of life off the field is important. When you enjoy life off the field, you're going to work harder on the field, but ultimately it still comes down to what this club is offering on the field to help make that player's decision.
Now, Chicago House, going back to them for just a moment. You turned them into someone that no one wanted to play in the U.S. Open Cup. You beat Forward Madison, who you'll now be coaching against multiple times this year, and you played Chicago Fire right across town. What was your biggest takeaway from these 3 years in Chicago that you'll bring to Florida with you to coach FC Naples?
Yeah. So for me, probably the biggest takeaway from being at House was um, the ability to hold standards in a locker room and hold those standards regardless of anything off the field, whatever. So with House, when I took over it, we had just left a professional and dropped to semi-pro. And I decided that I was going to kind of do something unique there. I was going to train 10 months of the year. We were going to train 4 to 5 times a week in the morning. The guys were not getting paid. And it was basically, if you want to come here, it's because you're trying to sign a professional contract. And we're going to hold professional standards, even though none of the players are getting paid. Your laundry is going to be done for you. You're going to have a fine system in place. You're not going to be able to miss trainings. You're not going to be able to have a normal job because obviously we're going to train in the mornings. And what I found is holding those standards. The guys rose to those standards. They held those standards. And I think that was the biggest piece of success, because during that 2.5 years as a head coach there, we had 15 players sign professional contracts. So it
Wow.
wasn't that I kept, I actually only one time in my entire time there did I use the same lineup 2 times in a row. Guys were constantly getting signed throughout. During that Open Cup run, one of our center backs from that played in Madison went and signed a pro contract in between that and the Chicago Fire game. And it was the next man up in that position. And so we were constantly losing players, which is what we wanted to do because we wanted to see them have success and move higher. But the standards and the culture, regardless of who was wearing the jersey, maintained that level.
That's incredible. 15 players signed from a semi-professional club in just that short amount of time. And to navigate that, I think that's the biggest testament to your coaching is guys are leaving. Your best players are leaving to go and play somewhere else, and to have to adjust to that in the middle of not only a season but an Open Cup run. It's an incredible testament to you. Obviously, to be able to take this job at Naples, you're dealing with professional players. Now, is there any switch in mentality, right? Because all these guys are so hungry for an opportunity. You're now coming to a professional league where, yes, these guys want to move up, but what's the way that you're going to ensure the same drive from Chicago to Naples?
Yeah, the biggest is in the recruitment process. I was very open and honest that when we sign a player here, we don't want them to stay here.
Yeah.
You're coming here to improve, to develop, to grow, to get an opportunity to showcase yourself, and we want to move you up as quickly as you can. Will that happen or not? Obviously, there's things that are outside of our control, and there's things outside of the coach's control, and ultimately it needs to be player-led on that drive. So making sure that the player is aware of what the standards and expectations are of why they're coming here and what they see value from us is important. Obviously, every player, regardless if it's amateur or pro, every player needs to be spoken to differently, needs to be handled differently, needs to be treated differently. Now, again, that's the challenge of a coach is how do you hold the same standard, but make sure you're reaching each player in the way they need to be. With a professional player, yeah, it's different in certain aspects of communication because some of these guys have 5, 6 years of pro experience, and that's different than an amateur. But I think the truths maintain the same no matter where a player's at. How you say it, how it's presented to it might change, but realities are all the same. And ultimately, if a player wants to go higher, that means usually change or improvement needs to happen because they're here right now and they haven't moved up. So what's that missing piece that we can help facilitate to give them the best opportunity to move up?
A couple more things. Cannot appreciate you enough for coming to hang out with us. Obviously, in the middle of a very busy preseason for you guys. Now, to those unfamiliar with Chicago House and your previous stops, what should people expect to see tactically from FC Naples as you guys begin play here in March?
So foundationally, the most important thing to me is the work ethic and intensity. Without that, it doesn't matter the tactics. If you don't have the effort, you have a responsibility when you put a jersey on to represent that community. And to me, fans will, whether or not you win, fans will always notice the effort given. And so to me, that's the foundational piece, especially in a place like Naples where there's a lot of successful people in different domains, right? They got to those levels of success through effort and work. And so that's something that this community greatly values. In terms of more tactical, we want to press. We want to be a high pressing team when those moments are on. We want to play vertical passes. We want to play on our front foot. We want to score goals that are exciting, that make the crowd engaged. But ultimately, the core of it is organizational defensively. Every game, even a bunch of amateurs, I told them, I played a bunch of amateurs against the first team, and there were still multiple quality goal scoring chances created in that game. I've never been in a game where you don't get any chances. So the most important thing is to mitigate the opponent's chances, because the longer you go without giving up a chance, you're keeping yourself in the game, right? If it's 0-0, anything can go your way in the 90th minute. If you're down 3-0, you need a lot of things to go right to catch up. So
Right.
defensive discipline and organization is key for us.
Now, I can't let you go without asking about your playing career. You spent a significant amount of time playing in Northern Europe, in places like Finland and Sweden. How did your time as a professional player impact the way you are now a professional coach?
Yeah, so I had a very unique experience. While I was playing overseas, I tore my knee up and had to retire. And during that off season, actually, the board asked me to take over as the head coach. So they brought in an assistant coach over there that had the licensure for the bench. But I went from in 5 months' time being teammates with guys to being their coach and
Yeah.
guys that were older than me. So that was a big adjustment. A lot of, maybe hard lessons along that path. But the biggest thing I think I've taken away from that is what did I not appreciate from coaches and what did I appreciate? Um, it's easy as a coach sometimes to forget the player's mentality or side of things. And I think it's so important to meet players where they are. Doesn't mean not to challenge them, doesn't mean to not hold standards, doesn't mean they're going to like you every day. But there's certain aspects that you can relate to a player and understand where they're coming from or where their mind's at that I think is important in building that culture and building that buy-in. And obviously, being maybe closer to some of the players' ages, I think, just life experiences, maybe I'm more not as far removed from some of it, so I can relate maybe a little easier at times because I'm not 30 years removed from some of the experiences that they're going through. But ultimately, you know, players don't get to this level by not challenging themselves and wanting to be good. So I think at the core root of it is how do you challenge them, not in a way of making them feel like they can never have success in your eyes, but rather seeing there's more they can get better at and having them feel success in those to continue buying to want to take their game to the next level.
Now, this is more personal curiosity rather than professional. You were injured and they gave you the coaching gig. Like, what kind of player were you to be able to get a coaching gig of guys that are older than you and more experienced than you? Like, how did that work out?
Yeah. Um, I was a player that knew my limitations. I was a center back. I was never the best in any of that. I just was willing to communicate, solve problems, work hard, throw my body in front of any ball, organize, and give everything to the team. Very, very disciplined in my play. So I think they saw enough tenets of that to be willing to take a kind of crazy risk. And it obviously forced me to want to put work in to repay that faith because yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a wild moment for them to decide that for sure.
What was it difficult? Obviously, some of the older guys, that relationship, how long did that take to build that up, or did they understand and got with it right away?
Yeah, it depended on the player, to be honest. Some were really good with it, some struggled with it. Through that experience, probably for me, what I learned the most that first year is the importance of communication, even if it's something the player doesn't want to hear. I maybe at times that first year didn't, I made a decision without having the communication with the player, which short term was easier for me, but long term maybe caused more issues. And so I really started to appreciate the open communication with a player, letting them know where my mind was, what I was thinking, why I made the decision. That not to say they would always agree with it, but at least I found most players can respect where you're coming from. And then in their mind, they know exactly why the decision was made. I think when you make decisions, players, without giving them the information, a player can go down rabbit holes that aren't accurate. Oh, coach doesn't like me because I didn't play this game because of this and this. And instead, when you explain why it is, again, they might totally disagree with your analysis of them or the decision, but at least they know exactly what you were thinking of why you did it. So it was definitely a challenging first year with some of the players that were older, but a lot of quality lessons as a coach gained through it.
I have like 1,000 more questions. We don't have time for any of those, but thank you so much for hanging out with us, Matt. Best of luck through the preseason, and ultimately when you guys play your first game coming up here in March.
Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much to everyone at FC Naples, and obviously to Matt, who gave us some time in the middle of a preseason. Building a team from scratch sounds like it's a very difficult thing, but the beach 12 minutes from a player's house makes it a little less difficult to get players down there. So we wish them the best of luck in their inaugural season in USL League One. And now I said this in the beginning, I'll say it again. Shout out John Morrissey for making time for us to talk about the first division coming in 2027. So plenty of things to be excited about. We will make sure to follow that story and get guests on according to the news that comes out. So massive shout out to everyone who appeared on today's show. Did not plan for this to be a two-guester, and especially two guests about two very different things, but journalism is fun that way, isn't it? So massive shout out to John and to Matt and to you for watching our program today. If you'd like to get in touch with us on the internet, you can. I am at Riley James IAC on Instagram and X. The show has an Instagram account at USL on Goals. The parent company is at goals.tv on Instagram, at goals_TV on X. And so many great videos available on the platform at www.goals.tv. Thank you so much for watching today's show. We really do appreciate it. We covered a lot, so we're super grateful you stuck all the way until here. For John Morrissey and Matt Poland, I'm Riley James. If anyone cares, we'll see you again next week with Joe Aguilera.